best. It's Wednesday here on The Story, and tonight, the largest credit union in Oregon is coming to downtown Portland, signing a lease to occupy some of the city's vast inventory in empty offices. Plus, a bill in Salem could force some online platforms to pay for digital journalism. We've got the details. But first, a public safety 1-2 punch. Multnomah County District Attorney is warning against potential budget cuts to his office as a local attorney readies a potential ballot measure to force the county to pay victims of property crime. It's our big story tonight.
For me to be able to provide core services to this community, we need a fully funded budget.
Anticipation is building around impending budget cuts coming to Multnomah County departments. And you can especially feel it inside Multnomah County's District Attorney's office. This morning, I sat down with DA Nathan Vasquez, who told me that Chair Jessica Vega Pederson asked him to prepare a budget with a 3% cut to his office.
So that means when we experience that cut, we're going to lose people. And that's DAs, that's investigators, that's staff members, and that's direct service to the community, to victims, and to public safety.
He said that a 3% cut to his department equals around a dozen or more staff members. Now, we're still fairly early in the county's budget process, so whether or not that cut actually happens remains to be seen. The DA certainly feels like if he's being asked to prepare a budget like that, that cuts are coming. But again, that's not necessarily true at this point.
I'll tell you that the volume of work and the complexity of work is such that that we need to see an increase in our budget, not a decrease.
A sentiment that's no doubt shared by many department heads in the county. Probably a safe bet that none of them are volunteering to have their budgets slashed. But there is little doubt that cuts are coming. But which departments will bear the brunt of those cuts remains to be seen. Now, this has been a hot topic ever since the county chair announced late February they need to fill a $104 million gap in just the homeless services department. Programs for homeless people could face 25% cuts. That's not including the $15 million deficit in the county's general fund. Chair Jessica Vega Pederson points to several contributing factors for the big gaps, including declining commercial real estate values, inflation, rising personnel costs, and the end of one-time federal relief funds. In the meantime, the chair has asked departments to prepare lists of potential cuts that she will consider. The district attorney's office gets much of its funding from the county, about 84% to be exact. But amid all of this, DA Vasquez submitted a proposal to the chair asking for an almost $5 million expansion to his department to hire more attorneys to focus on things like retail and auto theft.
When you hear that number, it's a big number, but the reality is compared to the other departments in the county, it is just like pennies or fractions of what those other budgets are. And again, I can't stress enough, we are the smallest department in the county, and I really believe we have a massive impact on this community.
Now, we won't get a better idea of where cuts will be made in the county until April 24th. That's when the chair will release her executive budget. But even then, there are 6 weeks of public hearings on that proposal, and commissioners can make adjustments to it before they vote on the finalized budget on June 12th. For what it's worth, the county chair's office did not respond to my multiple requests for comment today. And speaking of public safety, one Portland attorney is trying, in his own way, to make the county accountable for things that happen on our streets, specifically property crimes. John DiLorenzo was the attorney behind the 2022 lawsuit against the city of Portland for allowing tents to block ADA access on public sidewalks. The city settled that suit in 2023. However, they were just in mediation over whether or not the city is violating that settlement for allowing Multnomah County to hand out tents that end up on Portland streets. That is on hold for the moment per the request of the mayor, but we are closely following. But now, instead of a lawsuit, DiLorenzo is proposing something else that he hopes will improve public safety in Multnomah County. He wants to get this proposal on the November ballot, making it so Multnomah County is responsible for paying up to $2,500 to property crime victims for damages that happen within the county. Think of things like smashed windows, theft, and also physical injuries as a result of the crime. The proposal would require the county to create a crime victims compensation office to manage the claims and pay those claims within 60 days. It also prohibits the county from creating a new tax to fund this, meaning the budgets for the sheriff's office and district attorney's office would have to include some funding for this, pressuring the county to take meaningful steps towards lowering property crimes. So I asked DA Vasquez about this idea earlier today.
What I would prefer is that the county invest the money in public safety as opposed to kind of really having to come in on the back end and pay for these things. Do I understand where this is coming from? Yes. Would I much prefer that they appropriately fund public safety? Absolutely.
Joining us now live is John DiLorenzo, the man behind this proposal. Mr. DiLorenzo, thanks for coming on the show.
Oh, you're welcome. How are you today, Blair?
I'm good, thanks. All right, so talk to me. What sparked all of this?
Well, I blame the lack of leadership from Multnomah County as to why property crime is out of control. And besides homelessness, property crime is one of the biggest impediments to recovery of our community. You take a look at where we are right now vis-a-vis county budgets. There are 500 unstaffed, empty jail beds in Multnomah County because the county chair will not allocate sufficient funds to staff them. The county chair proposes to flatline the sheriff's office, should be expanding that, and is likely to attempt to cut the DA's office. And there are not enough sheriff's deputies to assist in investigating crime. Now, if we were to sit down and create a government from scratch, what is the very first thing we would want it to do well? We'd want it to protect us and to protect our property. Yet, the county chair who directs the budget is failing miserably in this way. So, I've learned over the years that one of the best ways to get action is to make your problem someone else's problem. And this initiative is designed to do just that.
So I want to talk about this initiative more, your proposal. It says come the end of 2026, so the end of next year, if the federal stats show that theft has dropped below 2014 levels in Multnomah County, then the county would not have to pay these claims for a year. I mean, realistically,
That's right.
Do you think that will happen?
Well, I think that ultimately the county will have no choice if this initiative passes but to fund public safety to get those crime statistics down to where they were in Portland's Hallican days. That's what we're trying to do. We don't want to unduly punish anybody's budgets. But the point is the county is failing to achieve the main reason why it was created in the first place. And until it does that, it shouldn't be losing its way financing other programs that have nothing to do with public safety.
So
now,
sorry to jump in here. In the proposal, you draw a connection between the county's harm reduction efforts to the increase in property crimes. And we know harm reduction is what the county calls things like handing out tents and tarps and drug supplies, mostly to homeless people. So connect those dots for me. How is handing out a tent a direct correlation to increased crime?
Well, we know that Portland has a rampant drug problem. And when people are addicted to drugs, they finance their habits by committing what some people feel are minor crimes, but what other people feel are the types of crimes that can destroy their opportunity to pursue a livelihood, like someone breaking into a car and then the owner no longer having it available for transportation and no longer being able to get to their job. Someone stealing a bicycle, which is needed for transportation by somebody who might be working in a coffee shop, who can no longer get to their job. I think it's time that Multnomah County start doing things for people who follow the rules and say, look, we've got your back as your government. We need to tell the small business person who sells sandwiches that when their windows are broken, we have their back. And we have to make sure that people who rely on transportation, rely on their bikes, rely on their cars, know that until such time as we get property crime levels below or back to where they were, again, when Portland was a wonderful city, the county's going to pay for it until such time as they do something about it.
So part of this requires the county to create a new office to handle these types of claims, which I assume means more staff. But let's be real. How is this even a possibility given the county is in the middle of a massive budget shortfall with cuts coming to seemingly every department? And now you're suggesting they hire more people and pay for a portion of property crimes. I mean, why do you feel like this would work given the county's current financial situation?
They would have to cut other budgets and focus on their prime directive, which is to make our community safe. Because without that, nothing else is worth it.
And is the underlying motive here to apply pressure on the county or to reduce property crime? Because it almost seems like, and if we're just simply talking about reducing property crime, that this is a reactive approach to that instead of a proactive one.
It is an attempt to put pressure on the county's leadership to redirect budgets to accomplish what should be the county's prime directive, which is to make our community safe.
And what is next for your proposal? I understand you need 30,000 signatures by September 19th.
30,000 signatures. Put it on the ballot. We are hopeful that if the measure passes, it will send a message to the county commissioners that the voters have a clear expectation of what their prime job is. And it'll tell local merchants and others that we have our back. And it'll tell our citizens that the county is actually willing to do something nice for people who fall.
Okay, John DiLorenzo, always a pleasure. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate you entertaining this proposal.
All right, well, now it is your turn to weigh in. What do you think about this proposal to pay victims of property crime? If this comes up on the ballot, would you vote for it? Why or why not? Email us, thestory@kgw.com, or call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. Or you can always hit us up on social media. Well, here on The Story, we like to keep an eye on what's going on with local news ecosystem here in the Northwest. Often, we talk about a legacy news outlet closing or being bought by an out-of-state company who immediately starts cutting staff. But there are a lot of people trying to revive local news. Tomorrow, a new outlet is launching called Lookout Eugene Springfield. It's an online-only news platform covering, you guessed it, Eugene and Springfield. The publisher, Ken Doctor, modeled it after an outlet he built in Santa Cruz, California, which, get this, last year won a coveted Pulitzer Prize. He says he chose to launch in Eugene after a U of O journalism professor approached him to talk about how much the legacy paper there has declined in recent years.
And I remember how good the Register Guard was, one of the best papers in the country, really, as an independent daily. And when it was bought by Gatehouse and then Gannett merger, it declined very rapidly. If you look at Eugene, it is a city that really cares about news.
The paper, Doctor says he's still calling it a newspaper, even though it won't be printed on paper, will be free for 90 days, and then some sections will be behind a paywall. But he says there will always be lots of free content. Now, figuring out how to pay for news production in the digital age has been the big question for news outlets large and small, new and old. Advertising revenue in recent years tends to go toward big tech companies. We're going to talk about that in just a minute. But some recent new outlets have been nonprofits like the Oregon Capitol Chronicle. Others have tried to find new agencies or audiences online. The doctor says the funding model for Lookout is more business driven, but he thinks people will pay for good journalism.
It's really the same model as all good journalism has been. It's got to be without fear or favor, strong accountability journalism, but also food and arts and across the board, essentially what a good newspaper gives you. It needs, number two, it needs capital. It needs investment. It doesn't need it doesn't need quote unquote support. It needs investment like any business. And what I figured from the beginning, and it was contrary to what many people have believed in this business, that it needed to be big enough and the staff needed to be professionally paid, that it needed a lot of capital.
He says they've raised $3.6 million already and hired a staff of 18, 15 of whom are journalists, some with decades of experience. The Lookout will also be hosting weekly listening sessions with members to get to know their audience, and they're also planning an annual party. And funding for local news was a big topic in Salem today at a public hearing on a bill that would charge those big tech companies for using information from local news outlets. Right now, companies like Google and Meta are sharing articles from local news on their own platforms, and they get that ad revenue. Meanwhile, the news outlets are making cuts in part because they're not getting that money. But Senate Bill 686 would require tech companies to pay online news providers to use their content. How much is up to the news outlet and the tech company to decide together. 90% would go to outlets and 10% would fund a new Oregon Civic Information Consortium, which would do research on media and technology. Outlets with more journalists on staff would get more, so it's supposed to encourage hiring. Several lawmakers testified in support today, including KGW alum and Oregon State Senator Lou Frederick.
72% of the newspaper staff was lost in Oregon between 2017 and 2022. When I went to work, while I was working as a television reporter at Channel 8, there were 100 people in the newsroom. There are about 30 now. A little closer to home, at one point, the press credentials for the state capitol had 65 people in 1995. There are now 15. Basically, we're not being covered. People do not know what's really going on here.
Research shows that when communities lose journalism, it costs taxpayers more because fewer people are watching over government spending, and misinformation spreads because people get their information from social media and less trustworthy places. The chief sponsor of SB 686 is Senator Con Pham, who says having healthy news outlets is important to democracy.
I would say even as a legislator, I depend on local journalism to do my job, to be able to know what is happening in my community, what's happening at the local level, the city council. It's so important to hold powerful entities accountable. And so as part of my democracy, a healthy democracy platform, I am deeply committed to ensuring that we're protecting and preserving our local journalism landscape.
But there was opposition from people saying the bill would hurt local news, especially smaller outlets and those in rural areas, and that it was likely to get tied up in litigation over free speech concerns. One of those was the guy you just heard from, Ken Doctor, who says he's afraid it would be challenged on free speech grounds and get tied up in court for a long time.
But there's a lot of publishers in the state, small newspaper publishers are ailing. They need help now. And there is no way that this bill is going to provide help now, given the litigation that is sure to follow.
For their part, Google says they support local news organizations with funding and resources, and they create products for journalists to use, saying they're committed to ensuring every community has access to quality information it needs. Senate Bill 686 had its first public hearing today in the Senate committee. No vote was taken today, but we're going to keep you posted. Well, coming up next on the story, quite the rebound on Wall Street today after President Trump announced a pause on just about all of his tariffs. But are the stocks back to where they were earlier last week? We'll get into the details when the story returns. A lot of green on the board today as U.S. stocks soared to one of their best days in history. The gains came after President Trump said he would back off on most of his tariffs temporarily. The president said on social media that more than 75 countries have decided to negotiate trade rather than retaliate with tariffs of their own. One major exception, though, China. The president lobbying a 125% tariff against that country's products as that trade war escalates. And despite the good news from Wall Street today on the market as a whole, U.S. stocks are still below where they were a week ago before the president announced his Liberation Day of worldwide tariffs. Well, Oregon's largest credit union, On Point Community Credit Union, will be opening an additional branch in downtown Portland. A business moving into downtown is noteworthy, given the struggling downtown recovery since the pandemic. Celine Stevens shows us how this recent announcement appears to be part of a larger, slow-moving trend of businesses coming back to the city.
On Point is really excited to be part of the revitalization of downtown Portland. We've been here since 1932, and we're going to be here in the future.
On Point Community Credit Union is bringing a second branch to downtown Portland to be located on Southwest Washington Street.
What we're able to do here is provide a full-service branch that has consumer lending, mortgage lending, investments, but we're also going to have our commercial hub here and our nonprofit hub. So it'll be a one-stop for all your financial needs.
The first and second floor of this building set to be transformed by the end of 2025. A step forward, not just for the building, but downtown as a whole.
The Union Bank moved out of the building really pre-pandemic, and so to reactivate this part of Broadway with a great locally owned and operated financial service company like On Point, we couldn't be more thrilled.
Although downtown Portland has been in a slump in recent years, Sydney Mead with the Portland Metro Chamber says there is some good news as foot traffic has been increasing and those high vacancy rates have been improving slowly but surely.
What we're really seeing is that people are investing in the downtown core. On Point has been a wonderful example of that. One of the things that I got really excited about, we track foot traffic in the downtown area. And so for the month of March, we're actually up 9% from last year.
While none of this is happening at record speed, Mead describes the current vacancy situation as a plateau. She expects it to only improve as other big leases are set to be announced soon.
We have a lot of vacancies, but I think we are seeing kind of a market adjustment. Rents are going down, and it's creating a great opportunity for people to come into the downtown. The downtown retail scene is beginning to pick up as well. We've seen 20 small and local retail businesses sign a new lease in the downtown area or announce that they're opening in 2025.
Peter Andrews with Melvin Mark Companies, which owns the building in partnership with Downtown Development Group, agrees things are looking up.
If you're a tenant or an owner and you've always wanted to be in Portland, this is the best time to be recommitting to our city.
Celine Stevens, KGW News.
Well, that is the end of our show, folks. Thanks so much for watching. The good stuff is coming your way next. And don't forget, everyone has a story to tell. In the meantime, have a great Wednesday night. I'll see you right back here tomorrow night at 6:30.